Have you ever felt a kind of fatigue that no night of sleep can cure? An exhaustion that doesn't come only from the body, but from somewhere deeper, older, as if your soul itself were begging for silence, for pause. Carl Jung, master of depth psychology, used to say that symptoms always carry a message. When we ignore the whispers of the unconscious, it begins to scream, and often it screams through exhaustion. But this exhaustion is not failure. It is revelation, a silent calling to return to yourself. In this video, we will explore exhaustion not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a messenger of the psyche, an oracle of the soul. What have you been denying yourself in the name of productivity? Which parts of your truth have been buried beneath expectations, obligations, and masks? Deep fatigue is a code of the unconscious that points to what has been ignored. Repressed desires, denied pauses, suffocated identities. It reveals the imbalance between what we show the world and who we truly are. And more than that, it reveals the cost of living far from the self, the authentic core of our existence. Throughout this journey, we will weave together Jungian psychology, Stoic philosophy, neuroscience, and even quantum physics to understand how rest can be an act of courage, an inner alchemy that transforms pain into consciousness. If you've ever felt tired of being tired, this video is for you. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who also needs to hear their own soul. And leave a comment below. Have you given yourself permission to pause? Chapter 1. The body cries out, the soul falls. Silent, what exhaustion is trying to say. The fatigue we feel is rarely just physical. It is a silent messenger of the soul, trying to alert us to what has been ignored for far too long. Jung once said, "What you resist persists." And when we resist psychic needs, the body ends up expressing what the soul has had no room to say. In the language of neuroscience, every thought, every emotion, every repression has an energetic cost. The brain consumes about 20% of the body's total energy. When we live in a constant state of vigilance, emotional denial, or relentless self-demand, we drain our psychic reserves, what Jung called libido, not in the sexual sense, but as vital force. Exhaustion, in this sense, is a warning from the unconscious. You are spending energy on what does not nourish you. This drain happens whenever we move away from what makes us whole, when we say yes to the world and no to ourselves. The soul then falls silent, but the body screams. Picture a dam filled to the brim. If you don't release the water little by little, it spills over, or it breaks violently. Fatigue is that dam. If ignored, it turns into chronic anxiety, autoimmune illness, burnout, or depression. But before that, it offers an invitation to listen. The first step is recognizing this truth. Exhaustion is not weakness, it is embodied wisdom. When the soul goes quiet, it is not because it has nothing to say, it is because it has been ignored too many times, and every physical ache may carry with it an emotional truth suppressed. You are living against yourself. This is the invitation. Instead of silencing the symptom with more effort or denial, stop, listen. Ask yourself, what within me is tired of being ignored? Chapter 2. Exhaustion as a path to the shadow. We live in a culture that worships productivity as virtue and treats rest as weakness. The phrase, "I don't have time," has become a badge of honor, when in fact it reveals a soul out of balance. But what happens when this pursuit of efficiency becomes an escape from yourself? Jung called persona the social mask we wear to adapt to the world. It is necessary, but when we live exclusively through it, we disconnect from our essence. Exhaustion then becomes a cry of the shadow, everything we repress in order to maintain the facade of strength, competence, and control. Imagine someone who lives to meet everyone else's expectations, saying yes when she longs to say no, smiling when she wants to cry, producing when her body begs for rest. To the world she looks admirable, but inside an emptiness grows, and her body begins to collapse. That collapse is the turning point. Exhaustion is not just an end, it is a threshold, a passageway into the unconscious. When we accept that pain arrives with purpose, we begin to see fatigue not as an enemy, but as a teacher. The shadow, in this context, reveals the truth we do not want to face. You are exhausted because you are living to please, not to be. Fatigue forces us to stop, and in the pause, we are confronted with what lies behind compulsive productivity, the fear of not being loved if we are authentic. Jung said, "Individuation begins the moment we recognize the shadow," and exhaustion is often its doorway, not because we are weak, but because we tried to be strong for far too long. Exhaustion is paradoxical. It weakens us so that we might rebuild ourselves in truth. Chapter 3. Pause as portal. The restorative function of inactivity. In the world that glorifies speed, to pause is a revolutionary act. But pause is not just physical rest. It is a portal for soul integration, a space where the psyche can realign, reorganize, and heal. In the language of neuroscience, pause enables neuroplasticity. The brain moves from survival mode into regeneration. In quantum physics, emptiness is not absence, but fertile field of possibility. Likewise, conscious inactivity is not unproductive. It is the fertile soil where the unconscious can germinate dormant wisdoms. It is in silence that we hear truth. It is in pause that the soul breathes again. Rest, therefore, is not disconnection. It is reconnection. It gives the body permission to metabolize emotions, the heart permission to slow down, and the mind permission to daydream. It is a return to the original state of presence. Pause is also emotional and spiritual. How often do we try to solve problems with sheer mental effort, unaware that the solution requires space? Many answers only arise when we allow ourselves to do nothing. In practice, this means creating small rituals of slowing down, turning off the phone for an hour, walking without destination, breathing deeply for 3 minutes, writing out your feelings uncensored. Simple actions, but they open cracks through which the unconscious can speak. The soul does not speak in shouts but in whispers, and to hear it, we must slow down. Pause is what allows inner life to flourish. Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." But to look within, we must stop, and to stop in this world is an act of courage. Chapter 4. The Call of Individuation. Growing tired of being who you're not. Fatigue is not merely a sign of depletion. Often it signals that something within us is dying so that something more authentic can be born. Jung called this process individuation, the natural movement of the psyche toward wholeness, which only unfolds when we stop living for the should-be and begin listening to who we truly are. Have you ever felt exhausted even after accomplishing all your goals? Have you noticed that even when you achieved what was expected of you, the emptiness remained? That is the pain of living in dissonance with the self, our deepest identity, often suffocated beneath social masks. The unconscious is wise. When we are not living authentically, it begins to send signals: discouragement, anxiety, irritation without apparent cause, and sooner or later the body collapses. But that collapse, though painful, is also liberating. It says, "Enough of being who you are not." Individuation begins when we grow weary of living for others and dare to ask, "Who am I beyond the roles I play?" This question, though simple, is profoundly transformative. It pulls us out of normosis, the pathology of normality, and reconnects us with our true values, desires, and limits. To listen to oneself requires courage, The soul cries for pause, not because it is weak, but because it longs for authenticity. And only when we stop can we hear the call, the invitation to stop surviving and begin truly living. Growing tired of being who you're not may be the first step toward becoming who you were born to be. Chapter 5. How to Listen to the Soul. Practices of Silence and Inner Restoration. Listening to the soul requires silence, and silence in the modern world is a luxury, but also a vital necessity. The soul does not speak in direct words. It communicates through symbols, sensations, dreams, intuitions. To hear it, we must create space. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This process begins with attentive self-listening, but how to listen if we are numbed by outer noise? Here enter simple yet powerful practices. Journaling. Write what you feel with no filters. Writing unlocks the unconscious and reveals hidden truths. Ask yourself, what within me is asking for rest? What am I denying my soul? Silent meditation. Sit in stillness for 5 to 10 minutes. Simply observe your breath. When the mind quiets, the unconscious emerges. Creative visualization. Imagine yourself in a safe and sacred place. Visualize meeting your true self. What does it have to say? Conscious breathing. Inhale slowly through the nose, count to 4. Hold the breath. Exhale gently through the mouth. This regulates the nervous system and calms the mind. Body listening. Where does it hurt? Where is there tension? The body holds emotional memory. Place your hand there and ask, what do you want to tell me? These practices don't require much time. They require presence, and presence is the greatest antidote to existential fatigue. When you listen to the soul, you begin to restore something no medicine can give, the bond with your own center. And in that center, you rediscover the strength born of truth. Chapter 6. Rebirth in Yourself, the Courage to be Real. After pause, listening and the confrontation with shadow, something begins to shift. Exhaustion gives way to a new kind of energy, not explosive, but serene, not forced, but flowing. It is the beginning of an inner rebirth. This rebirth is neither magical nor instant. It is the fruit of a process of pain, clarity, and courage. The courage not to betray yourself for approval. The courage to say no to what drains so you can say yes to what nourishes. The courage to let go of versions of yourself that once helped you survive, but no longer help you live. Jung affirmed, becoming who you are is not comfort, it is crossing, and every crossing demands loss, but it also offers gain, reconnection with the self, with the soul. Many women are reborn after burnout, a separation, a job loss, a grief. Not because they wanted these things, but because they were forced to look inward. Collapse becomes fertility, exhaustion becomes a portal, and they discover that what seemed like weakness was, in truth, the beginning of healing. Rebirth in yourself is like returning home after a long journey. You reunite with parts you had forgotten. You look at yourself in the mirror and say, "Now I recognize me." This process is not linear. There are relapses, doubts, insecurities. But once you have listened to your soul, you can never live as before. Consciousness does not allow it. Being real requires letting go of control, approval, and perfection. But in return, it offers something immeasurable, inner peace. And perhaps deep down, that is what your tired soul has been asking for all along. Conclusion. Rest is a revolutionary act of the soul. Fatigue is not the end. It is the beginning of a calling. It invites us to step away from noise, acceleration, self-demand, and return to what is essential, our truth. To rest in this world that values only doing is a radical act. It is to say, I exist beyond my productivity, and in that act, the soul begins to bloom again. Jung showed us that healing does not happen in straight lines. It happens in moments of pause, in instants of silence, when we allow ourselves to feel what is truly alive within. Pause is fertile. It restores, it reorganizes, it reconnects. And more than that, it returns us to ourselves. If you have come this far, perhaps you are tired not only physically but spiritually, and perhaps that fatigue is the greatest gift disguised as pain. A cry for you to return to yourself, for you to stop living to please, for you to remember who you truly are, beneath roles, masks, obligations. True rest is what restores the soul. It is when you look at yourself with compassion and say, I allow myself to pause, I allow myself to be. Now, I invite you to share in the comments, what has your soul been asking for most lately? If this video spoke to you, like it, share it with someone who needs this pause, and subscribe to the channel.